Welcome to the Weaving the Light Net TLDR, where we synthesize the week's news and wisdom from the web of planetary consciousness. You'll find threads of awakening, insight, and transformation woven into the tapestry of our shared journey through the cosmos. If you want to do deeper, check out the full-length episodes linked below.
What if the world isn't broken? What if it's being broken on purpose? Today we are diving deep into a collection of sources from LightNet that paint a pretty stunning picture of a hidden war for our very consciousness. We're going to explore what they call an architecture of control, but we'll also uncover a path toward reclaiming our own inner authority. Let's get right into it.
So, the sources we're looking at today kick things off with this really provocative question. What if all the chaos, the financial instability, the political theater, what if it's not a sign that things are failing? What if it's actually the final intentional phase of a long-planned design? Just think about that for a second. Well, it reframes everything that follows.
Okay, so the core argument here is that beneath the surface of our everyday world, there's this hidden architecture of control. And it doesn't just operate with money or laws, It works on a metaphysical level. And to really get it, we have to start with one key and, kind of unusual concept.
The sources introduce this fascinating concept called an egregore. Now, they're arguing this isn't just a metaphor. They believe it's a real, autonomous, psychic entity. Just think about the intense collective energy at a massive concert or the shared belief in a powerful brand. When millions of people pour emotion and focus into an idea, that idea, according to this worldview, literally takes on a life of its own. It develops its own will to survive and then starts to influence the very people who created it.
And this isn't just some ancient, dusty idea. No, the sources claim this exact mechanism is at play all around us right now. The spirit of a corporation that seems to prioritize profit above absolutely everything else, or the fever pitch of a political movement. These are modern egregores, and we feed them every single day with our attention and our emotion.
So how does a system of control like this keep up appearances? Well, one source calls it symbolic accountability. It's like a ritual that power performs to cleanse itself in public. When a scandal blows up, the system itself doesn't actually change. Instead, it puts on a three-act play for us. First, the big public apology. Second, the ritual sacrifice of a CEO or a politician. And finally, the confident declaration that, don't worry, order is restored. The public's outrage gets a release valve, but the underlying structure, it stays exactly the same.
But here's the thing, this control isn't just symbolic. The sources argue that while we're all distracted by the public theater, a much more concrete, much more solid framework has been quietly built inside the financial system, and this is where that abstract architecture of control becomes terrifyingly real.
All right, this slide is a big one. It shows a fundamental change that, honestly, most of us have never even heard of. For centuries, when you bought stocks or bonds, they were your property. Simple. But according to the documentary The Great Taking, which is cited in these sources, the legal codes have been quietly changed all over the world. You no longer have direct ownership. What you have is a security entitlement. It's just a claim. So what does that mean? It means if your bank or your broker fails, their creditors, we're talking other massive financial institutions, are legally first in line to take your assets to cover the broker's debts. Seriously, let that sink in. Your property is legally designated as their bailout fund, even if you personally have zero debt.
The sources use this absolutely chilling quote to sum it all up. The assets of the public held in these custodial structures, they aren't being protected by the system. They have been legally positioned as the collateral, as the dessert that's going to be used to bail out the system itself in the next big crisis.
So all of this leads to the next major theme in these LightNet articles, the ultimate conflict. The real endgame isn't for our money or our land, it's for our minds. The real battlefield is consciousness itself.
According to one source, a former combat pilot named M.D. Salig, the most effective control is the kind you can't even see. It's not achieved with armies and weapons, but with stories. By managing the public's perception of reality, by shaping the narratives we all believe, the people in power never even have to show their hand.
So how is this done? How do they pull it off? Well, the sources point to a few key strategies in the playbook. First, you maintain secrecy not with silence, but with noise. Just flood the zone with so much contradictory information that everyone's confused. They also point to secret oaths within certain organizations that bind people to a hierarchy.
And maybe most powerfully is the use of what they call fear-based narratives, presenting a potential crisis as this huge existential threat in order to justify grabbing more and more control.
And there's a metaphysical cost to all this. An analysis of Dr. William Schnobelin's journey through different secret orders suggests that these systems, these egregores we talked about, are literally sustained by the energy and attention of their members. The vows people make, often without having any idea what they're really committing to, they act like spiritual contracts that just feed the structure.
But, and this is a huge but, the story being presented in these sources is not one of doom and gloom, not at all. The next section shifts gears completely to what they call the Great Awakening, which is a powerful, hopeful resolution to this whole architecture of control.
I love this metaphor that's used in the articles. It's so powerful. The current global chaos isn't seen as an ending, but as a metamorphosis. Think about a caterpillar dissolving inside its cocoon. It's just goo. Our old systems, they have to break down completely before something new, a butterfly, can emerge. So the chaos isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign of transformation.
So how does a huge global awakening like this actually show up in our personal lives? Well, the sources point right to our relationships. The old model of love was often based on need, finding someone to complete you. But as we wake up, that illusion just collapses. The new model is love as presence. It's not about two halves making a whole. It's about two whole, complete individuals choosing to share their journey, not out of need, but from a place of mutual strength and celebration.
Ultimately, this whole great shift is about frequency. It's a collective move away from the low vibration of fear and division and control, and an alignment with the higher frequencies of love, unity, and what the articles call direct knowing, which is really just your own intuition.
Okay, so if this is the lay of the land, what can we actually do about it? The sources don't just sit there and diagnose the problem. They offer a practical guide with real, actionable steps for reclaiming our personal sovereignty. For financial sovereignty, the principles are super clear and direct. Get out of debt, because debt is described here as a weapon of control. Own real, tangible assets that you can physically control, not just numbers on a screen held by a third party. And, most importantly, choose clarity over the panic that the system wants you to feel.
And for spiritual sovereignty, the sources offer this checklist. Think of it like 5 red flags to help you figure out whether a group or a movement or an ideology is actually empowering you or just feeding on you. Does it demand total secrecy? Does it ask you to put the group's needs above your own conscience? These questions are an incredibly powerful tool for discernment.
And this right here, this really captures the central message of it all. The ultimate power, the ultimate act of freedom in this worldview is not to go fight the system on its own terms. It's to simply remember that your own consciousness, your intuition, is your highest authority, period.
And so we end up right back where we started, but with a new choice. The sources argue that we are always serving something with our energy and our attention. The awakening is simply the moment we become conscious of that choice. So the question isn't if we serve, but what we choose to serve, and why. A really powerful thought to reflect on.
You've been listening to the Weaving the Lightnet TLDR. To explore more about any of these topics, visit lightnet.co.uk or listen to the full deep dive podcast episode linked below. Give the video a like, share this episode with others who would appreciate it, and subscribe to join us next week as we continue weaving the web of planetary consciousness together. Stay sovereign.